He's been warned to leave his Leinster bias at the door. We'll see if he can do just that for us. Alan Quinlan is coming into us in a couple of minutes' time, where he's going to discuss all things Leinster Scarlets in the Guinness Pro14 final. So that's coming your way very shortly. And to take us there, we were all the way down in Limerick during the week. We were at Bruff Rugby Club in association with our friends at HeinekenRugbyClub.com. We had a great show, and you can check out the full podcast is up on offtheball.com. Do go and check it out. It's a brilliant listen. We'd John Hayes there, we'd Fiona Steed, Eddie O'Sullivan, loads of club members. We'd the referee, international referee George Clancy. So it was a great night. Let's take a quick clip here of the Irish rugby power couple, Fiona Steed and John Hayes, and here's how they met.
So I won't turn this into a Mr. and Mrs. I promise. But
do you want us to hold hands?
Well, you two met through rugby?
We did.
Okay, we'll move on.
You can tell it.
Will I tell it? I promised I wouldn't embarrass him, though, or he'd never do this sort of stuff again.
Okay.
But brief summary. We met at Shannon Rugby Club, where we both were playing at the time. The Foleys sort of introduced us. Anthony shoved him over, Rosie shoved me over, and we said hello. Actually, Brendan had a lot to do with it as well. And yeah, so that was back in 2001.
Right.
And sure, look, we haven't looked back since.
Great. Anything to add, John?
Well, it was the foot and mouth. It was the break for the foot and mouth, so sure. I was around for a few weekends.
Yeah. He had nothing else to do, actually. I went to the cinema with a group of my Shannon clubmates, because, you know, I had nothing else to do either because of the foot and mouth, apart from work full time. But and then there was him and Stringer and Golliv and a couple of others. They were in camp in Castletroy, and we were like totally unplanned. And Quinny was with you as well, wasn't he, at the time? And so the girls were like, geez, there he is. We hadn't started going out at this stage, and I was like, all right, yeah, cool. So anyway, the rest that we went in to watch, what was it that? We're going to show our age now.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, so Brendan met Trudy, I think, yeah. So me and my friends went in,
like that,
and then the rest of the boys went in, and no sign of John. And I thought, I can't say S-H-I-T. So holy God, he's gone now. That's ruined it. Anyway, about 5 minutes later, he comes in, and the boys wouldn't let him in. Quinny blocked him from getting into the seats, so he had to go and sit in his own, or sit with me, but he sat in his own on that night.
You did you?
I think so.
Well, just in front of them, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, God bless the foot and mouth anyway, John.
Yeah.
Every cloud is a silver lining.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said.
Quinny, your tentacles reach far and wide. You are responsible for Irish rugby's power couple, ultimately.
I'm not sure I'm solely responsible.
You had a part.
There was a little part, yeah. There was Axel was... he had a major part because his sister Rosie was playing with Fiona, so this was kind of on the cards for a few weeks, but we couldn't nail down Hayes to get him in a situation or go on a date. But the cinema meet just kind of happened. It wasn't planned, and we all we made it awkward for him that he had to chat to Fiona, and they got on fairly well at the start anyway. And they enjoyed each other's company, and it was probably a bit embarrassing for him at the start, but we were loving it. But anyway,
he loves talking about it, doesn't he?
He's very romantic, John. In fairness, you know, he's talking about the foot and mouth. He was around for a few weekends, but he's funny. He's great humour, John. He
admitted he was Mr. X as well. He said, "Listen, that's it. Fair enough.
Did he admit it?
Fair cop." Yeah, he said he was Mr. X, but then he also said that it was Marcus Horan who punched you in the back of the head.
Yeah, no, that was clear and obvious that it was Marcus, and Marcus is still in denial with that one, but yeah, it's finally out there, is it?
Yeah, no, it's out there. It's confirmed. I mean, because you tried to stick on the reverse lights when you were in here a couple of weeks ago.
I backtracked, yeah, but good days, yeah. Geez, it was 10 years ago yesterday. We won in 2008. It was amazing, but
that was yesterday, yeah, of course.
Yeah, wow. 10 years since we won.
Do you do anything? Do you get together?
No. There's a reunion in the summer, all right. You know, a bit of a get together, but in a couple of weeks actually. But yeah, it's amazing the way the years fly by.
Yeah,
it's good to get John though, because John won't do any. He doesn't really do any media stuff. He just had to do that because it was in Bruff.
Yeah. That's the reason we went down there.
Fiona, honestly, it's the only way you could get him. Fiona probably forced him to do it, and he had to do it for the club. But he's a great character. But look, with great memories, great fun.
It's a shame he doesn't do more, because he's really
He's very
interesting.
witty, because people don't know him, and I did a piece in the Indo last year with him, and it was so well received because he's so well respected in the game, and for what he's achieved, and maybe the path he had to take, moving from second row into back row, not starting playing rugby. And he started when he was 19, and I would have been really close to him because we would have travelled to a lot of the games, all the games together, to training together, and you know, he's a great character. People don't realise how funny and witty he is. He's really, really good fun, but he's just happy in his own skin. He's happy at home on the farm, and he's not. That was part of his life that obviously he doesn't forget, and but he's just not. He doesn't really go anywhere or do anything. We slag him about that, but he's great fun though, John. Great character, and someone, when you get to know him, he's so funny and witty and loves. He's a real prankster.
Is he? Yeah.
Oh, big time. Yeah, he is. Yeah, yeah.
What will he go away somewhere, or what do you do when you're having these 10-year?
There's a trip to Barcelona in June, so it's it's nice. We did one a couple of years ago for in 2016 for the 06 one, for after 10 years as well, and yeah, they're good. Obviously,
sure, it'll be poignant enough as well. Yeah,
we're usually trying to figure out where the years have gone, but that's sport.
You do take in a lot of culture. You'll sort of go and
we go out and we go for walks and stuff, and go for see movies and nice long meals and stuff like that. You know, we go to restaurants, and we're big
fine dining.
We're big into our food and stuff like that when we're away.
Right, let's get it stuck into the preview for the weekend, Quinny. That's why we have you here, Leinster Scarlets. I mentioned that I want you to leave your Leinster bias at the
where you're going with this Leinster bias. I've been very, very complimentary to him all year.
You have. Look, it's like I was kind of thinking about the fact that obviously it's 5 weeks since Leinster did that job on Scarlets. Like, they gutted and filleted them, and there looked like such a gulf between the two teams. I know there's some other dynamics that we can get into in terms of where Leinster are at and their run into the end of the season, but from Scarlet's point of view, I mean, is that still playing on their mind? Is it easy over a relatively short period of time to put the scars of that behind them, or are they actually so deep that it's going to have an impact?
It's not that easy. I think they will be trying to work, and they'll probably speak and obviously have addressed that and would have watched a video of it back, and the coaches would have done that and presented to the players, and they will just look at little things in that game that went against them and that they were second best, and the main one is the physicality and the physicality around the collisions, the breakdown, Leinster getting on the front foot, and then they can execute so well when they impose themselves, Leinster. So it's not rocket science. First and foremost, you've got to turn up physically and be physically prepared, and perform physically in rugby, because you know, if you get the edge in your opposite number, from a physical point of view, you can ask questions not just physically but psychologically as well, and you get on the front foot. So Scarlets were second best to everything, so that's something that Wayne Pivac and his team will have addressed. We've got to get in their faces, we've got to impose ourselves. And look, we know that they're a very, very good side when they get good quality ball. Gareth Davies is so dangerous at scrum half, so many threats. Johnny McNichol is back full back from the New Zealander. He was outstanding over in Glasgow last week, and they were brilliant. They were 28-3 up at one stage.
I watched them Friday night and I thought they're frightening.
No, they wouldn't want to get too far ahead of themselves in the performance, because I think Glasgow didn't have any meaningful games in such a long time that affected their performance. But they'll be full of confidence coming off the back of that result, saying, very simply, we cannot allow what happened in the Champions Cup semi-final happen again in the first 15-20 minutes. We've got to be the ones taking it to Leinster.
Very important over that early part.
It's massive. If Leinster get on the front foot, and if they feel there's a bit more vulnerability like there was in that semi-final, they go for it again, and they're very, very good sides.
Have to actually probably actively, I'm sure they're talking about actively trying to target that as well, that you don't want to give Scarlets any modicum of, you want to ram home the idea that we're a far better team than you, and we're going to prove that over the early few minutes to stamp out any degree of confidence.
Yeah, and sometimes, Adrian, that's not on the scoreboard. It's just putting in big tackles, putting them under massive pressure, making them defend for long periods. You might not get the scores, but at least you're saying, well, you're telling the opposition that we're up for this, we're full of energy, and we're going to do this for 80 minutes, and we're going to break you down eventually. But if Scarlets get a good start in the game, which we know they're capable of, if you look back to last year, and do you know what, coming into that Champions Cup semi-final, there was so much emphasis on Scarlets beating Leinster last year in the Pro14 semi-final, beating Munster so well in the final, and maybe they believed a little bit of that hype that they were a bit better than what they actually are. But to break down that Leinster side, you've got to be on the money for 80 minutes, and you've got to be really, really physical and intense, and stop their big players and stop them from getting momentum, getting over the gain line, because they're so good on front football. And if they can do that, I'm not sure if they can. They'll definitely be a lot better than what they were. But can they, sustain it over 80 minutes? I'm not sure.
Is this do or die for Scarlets, or is it kind of the next step onto where they're going to? Obviously, losing Tyburn is a huge blow to them when you look to the future of Scarlets, but there is kind of a sense about Scarlets this season that this is their year.
Yeah, well, look, after winning it last year, it's hard to come back and win it again, and I think, it's tough for them. If I was a Scarlets player or fan, I'd be saying, why am I going to Dublin again for another final? Why am I going there for a semi-final? It's difficult. Obviously, the semi-final is out of their control, but maybe the final being in Dublin again would frustrate them. But they'll have to try and draw on last year's performance against Munster in the same stadium and try and bin the other one, the negative one, and say, well, we can produce this kind of performance in good weather. And it is kind of there's a few changes. They have some signings for next year, but I think Tyburn is going to be a huge loss to them. So many turnovers, he affects so many parts of their game in a positive way, can break down the opposition, make brilliant carries, he scores tries. Even in that game in the semi-final, he was their standout player, and he was right to the end when he got the try. He was just going all the time. So it is probably last chance saloon. And when Pivek is said that, we don't want to be known as a one-season wonder. They've made so much progress in the last number of years there. And to be fair, they've a lot of quality players. Some great strike runners in the back line. Barkley is going to be a bit of a loss to him, his experience. He's out of the game, so it looks like Byrne will play in the back row now. But they didn't get near the Leinster ball in that game, and this is probably the key. It's the only way you can stop Leinster, and Racing maybe have shown that, and maybe a bit Munster last week. You've got to slow that ball down. You've got to force turnovers. You've got to put pressure in their faces defensively. You've got to be rock solid, because they ask questions all the time and their execution is really good. And that Scarlets back row did not get near the Leinster breakdown, that semi-final. And there was one example where Keane Healy's clean out on John Barkley, where early on in the game, Leinster were attacking a couple of yards out, and Barkley gets his hands on the ball, and Healy came in with a clean out, which was a remarkable piece of skill to get so low and clean him out, and they scored off that Leinster. And that just summed up that kind of attitude and intensity from Leinster that day, and their approach. So, Scarlets have got to get at that Leinster ball and force some turnovers.
On that approach, is a slightly different Leinster that we're looking at towards the back end of the season than the kind of free-flowing, try-scoring team that we've seen for large parts of the season. They've maybe been a little bit more pragmatic, which, I don't know, might be indicative of the fact that it's come towards the end of the season. There's some of the key players that have been carrying knocks. They're naturally just going to be knackered as a season, such a long season kind of rolls in. So that's one part of it. On the flip side, actually still managing to get it done, even in that context, is obviously a further endorsement of them. But what you're seeing of Leinster over the last few weeks is a slightly different Leinster?
It is, yeah. It's finding a way to win when they're under a bit of pressure and they're not on the front foot all the time. Defensively, there's very few weaknesses, if any, in this Leinster side, because even the impact off the bench last week against Munster, when you felt Munster maybe turning the tide a little bit in that second half, impact, Healy comes off the bench, Porter, Tracy, and they all have big impacts, turnover in the scrum. They're big moments, so they have players to come on and do that as well. Their league form in recent time, the last 2 or 3 months, hasn't been that good. They've lost a couple of games. They drew away to Scarlets. I know you're missing your internationals for a lot of these. So the form hasn't been outstanding in the league. I think they've maximised, and to be so successful on two fronts, we know it's in any sport, it's really, really difficult to do, because it's the emotional and mental side of that, and being up for every game, and it's very hard to get it emotionally right in every game. Your emotion has to be high to win big games, obviously, but so I think last week would have been much more difficult. Did it drain them? You know, the last 2 weeks, the final, that semi-final, maybe lack of preparation last week. I think they'll be definitely much more relaxed. They don't have to travel. They would have been at home in their beds Saturday night all weekend, and preparing well for this week. So I think there is one last push in them, and it's remarkable. If they're to win this, you know, the 55 players used in the league.
Unreal.
It's unbelievable, and in the mid-30s, 36 or 37 in Europe. That's phenomenal, Adrian. You know, to have that many players and to be able to use them. So I think they've had to manage probably 2 different teams throughout the whole year, and get the attitude right, get the execution right. And if they get the job done on Saturday, you've got to say they'll be deserving champions. But I feel Scarlets will be very, very dangerous. And it's kind of that expectation of maybe being the Pro14 champions last year, and we're going to knock Leinster off their perch, we can go to Dublin and win. That's gone now because they got walloped. So, you know, I think they'll throw caution to the wind. I think it should be a great game, because I think Scarlets will take some risks and they'll really go for it. And then, you know, when the game opens up, Leinster are so good as well. So it should be a cracker.
Yeah, you said that last week is the bigger challenge in terms of getting up for it emotionally, but then, like, look at Jack Conan after he scores that try. I mean, like, that was one of the most emotional things we saw last week, and it came from the Leinster side. Like, what is it about this Leinster team that allows them to get up to that pitch every single week?
Well, that's just kind of relief and excitement and adrenaline, I think, when you get a score like that. You're talking about emotion and getting up for games and being mentally right. And that can only be 1%, 2% below what that peak that you want, because you can't peak every week with that emotion. You can't be up for every single game. They're all different, but they seem to be have a great bond, a lot of togetherness, and they show that in their work rate on the field, you know. And they get a scrum turnover, a penalty turnover. You see the reaction of players, so they seem to be a tight-knit group, and that comes from success as well. When you win games, you look at the character of any side in sport, and they seem to have a really good character. The games that stick out for me are away in Glasgow in Europe in round 2, away in Exeter, those 45 phases or something, was it, or 40, mid-40s?
Yeah, Quinlan as well, obviously making the
Conan's try. So that's the sign of a team that are working hard together, and you know, so emotionally it's not, like, I think just to win each week and be up for it and have your head right and have that real kind of drive, it can be tricky at times to continue that run. But winning's a habit, and they're, you know, and to win in Europe, to win against Munster last week, when Munster were going to be throwing the kitchen sink at them, to withstand that with the changes, they're very, very well capable of doing again this week and getting the job done.
David Kelly is reporting in the Irish Independent this morning that Sexton is going to start, Nasei was going to start, Levy's going to start. I mean, all of which are a huge fill-up, obviously, from a Leinster point of view. But you're giving Scarlets a bit of a squeak by the sounds of things. Yeah,
I just think they'll be better, and it'll be tighter. I expect there'll be a lot of scores. The question is, and I think if I was a Scarlets player and their attack coaches, how do you break Leinster down? Maybe a little bit of vulnerability in the wider channels, because they used their wingers to come up in a little bit. And Munster, if they executed better last week, there would have been opportunities there. But
call it first.
I think Leinster will win by 6 or 7 points. I think they have that ability to give it one final push.
You're off to Australia, I understand, for the summer holidays.
Tuesday week.
More sort of sightseeing and, I'm sure, museums and
all that stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
Ross Byrne is in, Tyke Byrne is in. It'll be interesting to see Ryan versus Byrne, of course, although if Byrne plays in the second row, as you're saying, maybe that'll be the background.
It's just interesting how Leinster cope with him this week. Did they have a blue scrum cap on someone all week, targeting him again? I think James Davies is someone, the number 7 for Scarlets, who didn't perform in that semi-final. Physically, he was kind of second best to everything. Will he have a better game? Big chance for Ross Byrne down under, and for there's a massive chance for. Yeah, it is. It's brilliant. 2 uncapped players, and you know, I'm delighted for Tyg Byrne because, you know, he's someone that's going to be, has the potential to be in the squad for a long time. And Ross Byrne, he's played 19 games this year and has played really well for Leinster. So, great opportunity for them to be in that environment.
There'll be 2 big players from Munster next season, the 2 of them.
Well, I'm not sure we're getting Ross Byrne, but we might. We'll take him. Yeah. We'll take his brother as well, or Joey Carberry. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it'll be an interesting one. Should be a good game tomorrow.
Should be a cracker. Thanks a million for coming in.
Pleasure.